Hello and welcome. You can call me Bamboo. I'll be reading the novel Lord of the Mysteries by Cuttlefish That Loves Diving. This is just me practicing reading out loud. As English is not my first language, I might make some mistakes with pronunciations, and I'm not very used to speaking unless it's work related, so it would be a bit awkward to begin with. So please excuse any pauses, awkward silences, any mistakes, and so on. Here's a quick summary of the novel. Lord of the Mysteries follows Zhou Mingrui, a modern Chinese man who transmigrates into body of Klein Moretti in an alternate Victorian era steampunk world. He navigates secret societies, dangerous situations, investigates paranormal cases, and establishes a secret organization called Tarot Club. Now I've seen the Donghua season one and I have read up to around chapter 50, I think. So I kind of know how this starts. So let's see how it goes. Okay, starting now Lord of the Mysteries, Volume 1, The Clown by Cuttlefish That Loves Diving. Chapter 1, Crimson. Painful. How painful. My head hurts so badly. A gaudy and dazzling dream world filled with murmurs instantly shattered. The sound asleep Zhou Mingrui felt an abnormal throbbing pain in his head as though someone had ruthlessly lashed at him with a pole again and again. No, it was more like a sharp object pierced right through his temple, followed by a twist. In his stupor, Zhou Mingrui attempted to turn around, look up, and sit up. However, he was completely unable to move his limbs as though he had lost control over his body. From the looks of it, I'm still not awake. I'm still in a dream. Who knows? Perhaps the next scene will be of me thinking I'm already awake, but in fact, I'm actually still sleeping. Zomingri, who was not unfamiliar with similar encounters, tried his best to focus in order to escape the shackle placed upon him by the darkness and confusion. However, while still in his reverie, whatever will he could summon was ethereal, like a fleeting fog. He found his thoughts difficult to control and introspect. No matter how much he tried, he still lost his focus as random thoughts surfaced in his mind. Why would I suddenly have such an excruciating headache in the middle of the night? And it's really painful. Could it be something like cerebral hemorrhage? Fuck. Don't tell me I'm going to die young. I need to wake up now. Eh? Why doesn't it seem to hurt as much as before? But why does it still feel like a blunt knife is slicing through my brains? From the looks of it, I won't be able to continue sleeping anymore. How am I to show up for work tomorrow? Why am I still thinking about work? This is some authentic headache. Of course, I have to take time off. I don't have to worry about my manager's grumblings. Hey, putting it that way, it doesn't seem too bad. I can end up getting some spare time for myself. Throbbing pain induced Zomingui, allowing him to slowly accumulate immaterial strength until he was finally able to move his back and open his eyes. Finally He finally broke free from his reverie. His vision first blurred before it was screened by a faint crimson red. All he could see was study desk made of burly wood right in front of him. Right in the middle was an open notebook with coarse yellow pages. The title was eye-catchingly written with strange, deep black lettering. To the left of the notebook was a stack of neatly arranged books, numbering about 8. The wall on their right was inset with grayish-white pipes with wall lamps connected to them. The lamp has classical Western style to it. It was about half a size of adult's head with inner layer of transparent glass and exterior gridded with black metal. Diagonally beneath the lamp was a black ink bottle shrouded in pale red glow. Its embossed surface formed a blurry angel pattern. In front of the ink bottle and to the right of the notebook sat dark-colored pen with fully circular body. Its tip shimmered with faint glint while its cap rested right beside a brass revolver. A gun? A revolver? Zomingui was completely taken aback. The things laid before him were alien to him. It looked nothing like his room. While feeling shocked and confused, he discovered that the desk, notebook, ink bottle, and revolver were covered in a layer of crimson veil, a result of the light shining from the window. Subconsciously, he looked up and shifted his gaze a bit up bit by bit. In midair, a crimson moon hung high above the black velvet curtain, glowing in silence. This Zormingui felt inexplicably horrified as he stood up abruptly. However, before his feet fully straightened, his brain protested with throbbing pain. It made him temporarily lose his strength as he fell uncontrollably. His buttocks slammed heavily onto the burly wood chair. The pain did little. Zomingui stood up again by propping himself up. He turned around in a fluster as he began to size up the environment he was in. The room was not very large, with a brown door on each side of the room. Close to an opposite wall was a low wooden bed. Between the bed and the left door was a cabinet. Its two doors were swung open, and beneath it were five drawers. To the side of the cabinet there was some grayish white pipe on the wall at the height of a person. However, it was connected to a strange mechanical device with exposed gears and bearing in several spots. Items resembling coal stoves stacked in the corner of the room near the table, along with soup pots, iron pots, and other kitchen utensils. Across the room, across the right door, was a dressing mirror with two cracks. Its was made of wood and patterns were simple and plain. With a sweep of his gaze, Zhou Mingrui noticed himself in the mirror. The present him. Black hair, brown eyes, a linen shirt, thinly built, average looking features, and a rather deep outline. This Zhou Mingrui immediately drew a gasp as many helpless and confused guesses surfaced in his mind. The revolver in ancient European style, and the crimson moon that looked different from Earth's moon could only mean one thing. Could I have transmigrated? Zomingui widened his mouth slightly. He had grown up reading web novels and often fantasized over such scenes. However, he momentarily found it hard to accept the situation when he found himself in one. This was probably what it means to love a fantasy. In a minute, Zomingui had already cursed himself while trying to make the best out of his adverse situation. If not for his still throbbing headache that made his thoughts high strung but clear, he would definitely have suspected that he was dreaming. Calm down, calm down, calm down. After taking a few deep breaths, Zomingui worked hard to stop panicking. At that moment, as his mind and body calmed down, memories began flooding him as they slowly appeared in his mind. Klein Moretti, a citizen of northern continent's Loen Kingdom, Awa County, city of Tengen. He is also a recent graduate from the Department of History at Khoi University. His father was a sergeant of Imperial Army who had sacrificed himself during a colonial conflict with the southern continent. The bereavement allowance gave Klein the opportunity to study at a private language school and laid the foundation for his admission into university. His mother was a devotee for Evernight Goddess. She passed away the year Klein passed the entrance exam to the Khoi University. University. He also had an elder brother and a younger sister. They stayed in two-bedroom apartments together. Their family was not wealthy, and its situation could even be described as somewhat wanting. At present, the family was supported solely by the elder brother who worked at an import and export company as a clerk. As a history graduate, Klein grasped knowledge of the ancient Phasak language, deemed the origin of all languages in the northern continent, as well as the Hermes language, which often appeared in ancient mausoleums, as well as texts regarding sacrificial and praying rituals. Hermes language. Zomingui's mind stirred as he reached out to rub his throbbing temples. He cast his gaze towards the table at the open notebook. He noticed that the text on the yellowed paper turned from strange to alien before turning from alien to something familiar. It then turned into something readable. It was written, it was a text written in Hermes language. Hermes, Hermes language? The dark ink wrote the following: Everyone will die, including me. Zomingri felt inexplicably horrified. Oh, that word. Inexplicably horrified. He instinctively leaned back in an attempt to widen the distance between him and the notebook, as well as the text on it. Being very weak, Being very weak, he nearly fell down, but managed to extend his hands in a fluster to hold onto the edge of the table. He felt that the surrounding air was turbulent, as though there were faint murmurings resounding in it. The feeling was akin to hearing horror stories being recounted by elders when he was young. He shook his head, believing that everything was an illusion. Zomengui found his balance and shifted his gaze from notebook as he heaved for breath. This time, his gaze landed on the shimmering brass revolver. He suddenly had a question arise in him. With client's family situation, how could they have money or means to buy a revolver? Zomengui could not help but frown. While deep in thought, he suddenly discovered a red handprint to the side of the table. Its color was deeper than the moonlight and much thicker than the veil. It was a bloody handprint. A bloody handprint? Zomingui subconsciously flicked his right hand that had been holding the edge of the table. Looking down, he saw that his palm and fingers were covered in blood. At the same time, the throbbing pain in his head continued. Although it had weakened a little, it continued incessantly. Did I smash my head open? Zomingri guessed as he turned around and walked toward a cracked dressing mirror. A few steps later, a black-haired figure of medium build and brown eyes appeared clearly in front of him. The person had a distinct scholarly air to him. Is this the present me? Clan Moretti? Zomingri was stunned momentarily. Since there was insufficient lighting at night, he failed to see something clearly. He continued forward until he was just a step short from colliding with the mirror. Using the crimson veil like moonlight as illumination, he turned his head and examined the corner of his forehead. A clear reflection appeared in the mirror. His temple, a grotesque wound with burn marks along its periphery. Blood stained the wound surrounding, and there were grayish-white brain juices swarming slowly within. A footnote. I think this is about loving a fantasy. This is actually a proverb that describes Lord Yer. In ancient times, Lord Yer was very fond of dragons, adorning his whole palace, beams, pillars, doors, windows, and walls with drawings and carvings of them. When a real dragon in the heaven heard of this, it was deeply moved by his infatuation and paid him a visit. When Lord Yer saw the real dragon thrusting its head through the window of his study and its tail moving in his palace, he was frightened out of the house for his life. Clearly, what Lord Yer loved was not the real dragon, but loved a fantasy. Chapter 2: Situation. Zomingri reeled back in fear at the sight that greeted him. As it was as though the person in the dressing mirror was not himself, but a desiccated corpse. Corpse. How could a person with such grievous wounds still be alive? He turned his head in disbelief again and checked the other side. Even though he was a distance away and the lighting was poor, he could still see the penetrating wound and dark red bloodstains. This Zomengrui drew a deep breath as he tried hard to calm himself. He reached out to press his left chest and sensed his racing heart that exuded immense vitality. He then touched his exposed skin. Beneath the slight coldness was flowing warmth. When he squatted down and after verifying his knees could bend, Zomengrui stood up again and calmed down. What's happening? He muttered with a frown. He planned to inspect his head injury seriously once more. He took 2 steps forward and suddenly paused. The moonlight of the sanguine moon was relatively dark, so it was insufficient for his serious inspection. A memory fragment triggered as Zomingrui turned his head to look at grayish-white pipes and the metallic gridded lamp on the wall right beside the study desk. This was the most common gas lamp of the times. Its flame was stable and its illumination capabilities were excellent. With Klein Moretti's family situation, even a kerosene lamp was a dream, much less a gas lamp. Using candles was most apt for their standing and stature. However, back when he burned the midnight oil for 4 years to be admitted into Coe University, his elder brother Benson felt that it was an important matter which their family's future depended on. Therefore, he insisted on creating and conductive studying conditions for Therefore, he insisted on creating conductive studying conditions for Klein, even if it meant taking on debt. Of course, Benson, who was literate and had worked for several years, was not a rash person who did not think of the consequences. He had quite some tricks up his sleeve. He reasoned with the landlord to raise the apartment standards by installing gas pipes to improve the likelihood of renters in the future. The landlord was convinced and provided money to complete the basic modifications. Then, using the convenience of working at an import and export company, he purchased brand new gas lamp, which was nearly at cost price. In the end, all he needed was to use his saving and did not need to borrow money. After the memory fragment flashed past his mind, Zomingrui came to the desk where he turned the pipe's valve and began twisting the gas lamp switch. With a sputtering sound, a spark sounded from fiction. Light did not descend upon Zomingrui as he had expected. He twisted a switch few more times, but all the gas lamp did was sputter and remain dark. Hmm. Retracting his hand and pressing on his left temple, Zomingrui sought for a reason by rummaging through his memory fragments. A few seconds later, he turned around and walked towards the door. He arrived at the machine installation, which was similarly inset into the wall and had grayish white pipes connecting to it. This was a gas meter. After seeing the exposed gears and bearing, Zomingrui took out a coin from his trouser pockets. It was dark yellow in color and had a bronze shimmer to it. The front of the coin was engraved with a portrait of a crown-wearing man, and there was a one on the clump of wheat on its back. Zomingrui knew that this was the most basic currency of the Lion King. It was called a copper penny. 1 penny's purchasing powers of was roughly 3 to 4 yuan before his transmigration. Such coins had other denominations such as 5 pence, a half pence, and a quarter pence. Besides the 3 types, the denominations were not in small enough units. In everyday life, one had to buy several different things just to spend a single coin from time to time. After flipping the coin, which was only minted and circulated after King George III ascended to the throne, few times, Zomingrui inserted it into gas meter's thin vertical mouth. After the penny fell to the bottom of the meter, the sound of grinding gears sounded immediately, producing a short but melodious mechanical rhythm. Zomingrui stared at the meter for a few seconds before returning to the burly wood desk. He then reached out to twist the gas lamp switch. After some sputtering, there was a sharp sound. A fire plume ignited and rapidly grew. Bright light first occupied the internals of the wall before penetrating the transparent glass, blanketing the room with a warm glow. Darkness quickly receded as Crimson retreated out the window. Zomingri felt at ease for a baffling reason as he quickly came in front of the dressing mirror. This time he seriously inspected his temple and did not miss a single detail. After a few rounds of inspection, he realized that apart from the original blood stain, the liquid was no longer flowing out of the grotesque wound. It appeared like it had received best hemostasis and bandaging. As for the slowly squirming grayish-white brain and discernible growth of flesh and blood around the wound, it meant the wound might take 30 to 40 minutes or maybe even 2 to 3 hours before it would only leave a scar. The restor, restorative effects of the transmigration brings. Zhou Mingui curled up the right corner of his mouth as he muttered silently. Following that, he let out a long sigh. Regardless, he was still alive. After settling his mind, he pulled open a drawer and took a tiny piece of soap. Took one of the old and tattered towels hanging by the side of the cupboard and opened the door. He then walked to the public bathroom, which was shared by the tenants on the second floor. Yes, I should clean up the blood stain on my head, or I'll keep looking like a crime scene. It's fine scaring myself but if I were to scare my sister Melissa when she gets up early in the morning tomorrow, it would be quite problematic. The corridor outside was pitch black. Silhouettes were barely accentuated by the crimson moonlight from the window at the end of the corridor. They looked like a pair of monster eyes that silently observed the living late into the night. Zomingri lightened his footsteps as he walked towards the communal bathroom with a shuddering fear. When he entered, there was even more moonlight, allowing him to see everything clearly. Zomingri stood in front of the wash basin and turned the tap's knob. Upon hearing the gushing sound of water, he suddenly recalled his landlord, Mr. Frankie. As the water was included in the rent, this short and thin gentleman who wore a top hat, a vest, and a black suit always inspected the bathroom actively to take note of any sounds of flowing water. If the water gushed too loudly, Mr. Frankie would ignore all of his gentlemanly traits by flailing his walking stick and striking the bathroom's door, shouting things like, "Darn thief, wastage of shameless matter. I'll remember you. If I see this happen another time, scram along with your filthy luggage. Mark my words, this is the most value for money apartment in Tingen City. You will not find a more kindly landlord anywhere else." Putting away those thoughts, Zomingri used a moist towel to clean the blood stain from his face again and again. After checking himself using the rundown mirror in the bathroom, verifying that all that was left was a hideous wound and a pale face, Zomingri relaxed. Then he took off his linen shirt and used a bar of soap to wash away the blood stains. At that moment, he knitted his brows and recalled a possible problem. The wound was too exaggerated, and there was too much blood. Apart from his body, his room likely still had signs of his injury. After Zomingri was done with his linen shirt a few minutes later, he briskly returned to his apartment with a moist towel. He first wiped the blood had print on the desk, then using the glass lamp's illumination sought out spots he missed out earlier. He immediately discovered that quite substantial amount of blood had splattered onto the floor beneath the desk, and there was a yellow bullet to the left side of the wall. Releasing a round with revolver pointed at the temple. After mixing and matching the clues from before, Somingru had a rough idea how Klein had died. He was no hurry to verify his guess. Instead, he seriously wiped away the bloodstains and cleaned up the scene. Following that, he took the bullet and returned to the side of his desk. He opened the revolver cylinder and poured out the rounds inside. Total of 5 rounds and a cartridge shell all had a brass luster to them. Indeed. Zomingri looked at the empty cartridge shell in front of him and stuffed the rounds back into the cylinder while nodding. He shifted his gaze to the left, and it landed on the notebook's words: "Everyone will die, including me." Following that, even more questions arose in him. Where did the gun come from? Was it a suicide or a fake suicide? What kind of trouble could a history graduate of humble origins get himself into? Why would such a suicide method only leave behind so little blood? Was it because I transmigrated in a timely manner and it came with healing benefits? After pondering for a moment, Zomingrui changed into another linen shirt. He sat on the chair and began pondering over more important matters. Client's experience was still not something he needed to concern himself with. The true problem was to figure out the reason for his transmigration and if he could return. His parents, his relatives, best buddies, and friends, the fascinating world of internet, and all sorts of delicious delicacies. These were the reasons that prompted his desire to return. Zomingrui's right hand was subconsciously pulling out the revolver cylinder and slamming it back into place again and again. Yeah, there has not been much difference for me between this period of time and the past. I was just a little unlucky, but why would I transmigrate for no baffling reason? Bad luck? Yes, I tried a luck enhancement ritual before dinner today. A thought flashed in Zomingrui's mind, illuminating the memories which were concealed by the fog of confusion. As a qualified keyboard politician, keyboard historian, keyboard economist, keyboard biologist, and keyboard folklorist, he had always deemed himself as knowing something of everything. Of course, his best buddy would often mock him as only knowing little of everything, and one of them was Chinese divination. When he visited his hometown last year, he had discovered a thread-bound book titled Quintessential Divination and Arcane Art of Qin and Han Dynasty at an old bookstore. It looked pretty interesting and could aid him in posturing on the internet, so he bought it. Unfortunately, his interest was short lived. The vertical script it used made the reading experience horrible. All he did was flip through the beginning pages before he threw it in the corner. He had experienced a spate of bad luck in the past month, losing his cell phone, customers running away after cheating him, and mistakes at work. Only then did he suddenly recall a luck enhancement ritual written at the beginning of quintessential divination and arcane arts. Furthermore, the requirements were extremely simple, without any basic foundation requirements. All he needed was to get 4 portions of staple food in his area, place them in 4 corners of his room. They could be placed on furniture such as tables and cupboards. Then, standing in the middle of the room, he had to take 4 steps in counterclockwise fashion to make a square. The first step required him to sincerely chant, "The immortal Lord of heaven and earth for blessing." The second step was to silently chant, "The Sky Lord of heaven and earth for blessing." The third step was, "The exalted the arch of heaven and earth for blessing." And the fourth step was, "The celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessing." After the 4 steps were taken, he needed to close his eyes and wait 5 minutes in his original spot. Only then would the ritual be considered complete. Since it did not cost him any money, he found the book, followed what was stipulated, and did it before dinner. However, nothing happened back then. Who would have guessed that he would actually transmigrate in the middle of the night? Transmigration. There was a distinct possibility that it's due to that luck enhancement ritual. Yes, I should give it a try here. If it's really because of that, I stand a chance of transmigrating back. Zomingui stopped flicking the revolver cylinder and suddenly straight up. Regardless, he had to give it a try. He had to attempt a Hail Mary. Chapter 3: Melissa. After confirming his plan, Zhou immediately felt he had a mental crutch. His fear and unease were all swept away into the corner of his mind. Only then did he have the mood to carefully study clients' memory fragments. Zhou habitually stood up before turning off the pipe's valve. He watched the wall lamp gradually dim until its flame extinguished before sitting back down. As he subconsciously fiddled with the revolver's brass cylinder, he pressed the side of his head. He slowly recalled his memory in the crimson-dyed darkness as though he was the most attentive viewer in a movie theater. Perhaps as a result of having a bullet pass through his head, client's memories were like shattered glass. Not only were the memories not contiguous, continuous, there were many spots which were clearly missing. For example, memories pertaining to how the exquisite revolver appeared in his possession, whether he had committed suicide or was killed, as well as the meaning of the words "everyone will die, including me" on the notebook, whether he had participated in anything or 2 days before the incident. Not only had these particular memories become fragmented, there were also missing pieces. It was the same, even for the knowledge he ought to know. In the light of present situation, Zhou Mingrui believed that if Klein were to return to university, it was unlikely he could graduate. This was despite him having left campus just a few days ago without relaxing a bit. He needs to participate in Tingen University's history department interviews 2 days later. The university graduates of fluent kingdoms do not have the tradition of staying at their alma mater. His mentor had given him recommendation letter for Tingen University and Backland University. Through the window, Zhou Mingrui silently observed the red moon setting in the west. The gradual sinking of the moon continued until the faint light glowed from the east, dyeing the horizon golden. At that moment, there was a commotion inside the apartment. Soon, the sounds of footsteps approached his door. Melissa is awake. She's really as punctual as always. Zomingri smiled. Due to class memory, seeing Melissa made him feel as though she was really his younger sister. However, I do not have a younger sister, he immediately contradicted himself. Melissa was different from Benson and Klein. Her rudimentary education was not completed at the Sunday school classes offered by the Church of Evernight. When she reached schooling age, the Loen Kingdom had enacted the Basic Education Law. A primary and secondary education committee was established and was specially provided with funding, increasing the kingdom's investment into education. In less than 3 years, under the premise that numerous church schools would be incorporated, many primary schools were established to strictly maintain the principle of religious neutrality. This was to prevent education from involving itself in the conflicts between Lord of Storms, Evernight Goddess, and the god of steam and machinery. Compared to Sunday school that only cost a copper penny a week, a public primary school's cost of 3 pence a week appeared rather expensive. However, the former only provided education every Sunday, whereas the later provided 6 days of classes a week. In conclusion, the price was so low it was almost free. Melissa was different from most girls. From a young age, she enjoyed things like gears, springs, and bearings. Her ambition was to be a steam mechanic. Having suffered from lack of culture, Benson, who knew the importance of education, supported his sister's dream, just like he supported Client's university education. After all, Tingen Technical School was only considered secondary education. There was no need for her to attend language school or a public school for more knowledge. In July last year, 15-year-old Melissa passed her entrance examination and fulfilled her dreams of becoming a student at Tingen's Technical School's Steam and Machinery Department. As such, her weekly school fees raised to 9 pence. Meanwhile, Benson's company was affected by the situation in southern continent. There were there was a drastic drop in both in profit and business transaction. More than a third of employees were retrenched. In order to keep his job and maintain their livelihood, Benson could only accept more arduous tasks. He had to work overtime more frequently or head to places with harsh environments. This was what he was occupied with past few days. It was not that client did not think of helping share his elder brother's burden, but being born a commoner and having been admitted into average language school, he felt a strong sense of inadequacy while he enrolled into the university. For example, as the origin of all languages in northern continent, the ancient language of Fasak was something all children of nobles and of wealthy class would learn from a young age. In contrast, he only made first contact with it in university. He faced many similar aspects during his schooling career. Client nearly gave his all and often stayed up late into the night and woke up very early before barely managing to catch up to the others, eventually allowing him to graduate with average results. Memories regarding his elder brother and younger sister remained active in Zomingrui's mind until he turned the door not open. Only then did he jolt awake and remember that he held a revolver in his hand. This was a semi-regulated item. It will scare children. Also, there is still a wound on my head. With Melissa arriving at any moment, Zomingrui pressed onto his temple and hurriedly pulled open a desk drawer and threw the revolver in before slamming. What happened? Melissa looked over curiously when she heard the commotion. She was still in prime of her youth, even though she didn't have much nutritious food to eat, making her face thin and slightly pale. Her skin remained lustrous as it exuded the vibes of a young girl. When Zomingri saw his sister's brown eyes look over, he forcibly composed himself and picked up an item beside his hand before calmly closing the drawer to conceal the existence of the revolver. He placed his other hand on his temple, the texture confirming that his wound had already healed. He took out a silver wine leaf pocket watch and pressed the top gently, causing its cover to flip open. It was a picture of the sibling's father. It was the most valuable item the Imperial Army sergeant left behind. But the second-hand item, which would often malfunction from time to time in recent years, even though he had gotten a watchman to fix it. It had embarrassed Benson, who enjoyed bringing it with him to elevate his status many a time. So it was thrown away back at home in the end. It had to be said that perhaps Melissa did have talent in machinery. After grasping the principle behind the watch, she borrowed the tools from her technical school to fiddle with the pocket watch. Recently, she even claimed to have fixed it. Zomingri looked at the watch open covers and saw that the second hand was not moving. Subconsciously, he twisted the top dial to wind the pocket watch. However, despite winding it a few times, he did not hear the sound of taut springs. The second hand remained motionless. It looks like it's broken again. He looked at his sister while trying to find a topic of conversation. Melissa shot him an expressionless glance and briskly walked over to take the pocket watch away. She stood in her spot and pulled the button sitting atop the pocket watch. With a few simple turns, the tick-tocking of the second hand sounded. Isn't pulling the button up usually means to adjust the time? The Mingri's expression immediately turned black. At that moment, a bell chimed from faraway cathedral. It chimed 6 times, sounding distinct and ethereal. Melissa tilted her head to listen to it and pulled the button up once again. Following that, she turned it to synchronize the time. It's okay now, she said simply without emotion. She pressed the top button back and handed the pocket watch back to Zomiguri. Zomiguri smiled politely in embarrassment. Melissa gave her elder brother a piercing stare before turning to walk to the cupboard. She took her toiletries and towel before opening the door to leave. She headed for the public bathroom. Why did her expression have a look of disparagement and resignation? Is it a look of love and concern for a retarded brother? Zomingri lowered his head and chuckled. His closed pocket watch cover He closed the pocket watch's cover with a click before opening it again. He repeated this action as his idle thoughts focused on a question. Klein committed suicide without a silencer. Well, I'll have to consider it a suicide for now. His suicide should have caused quite a commotion, yet Melissa, who was just a wall away, did not notice it at all. Was she sleeping too soundly, or is Klein's suicide shrouded in mystery to begin with? Click. The pocket watch opened. Clack. The pocket watch closed. Melissa returned from washing up and saw her brother's subconscious act of constantly opening and closing the watch. Her gaze was once again glazed with exasperation as she said with a sweet voice, Klein, take out all the remaining bread. Remember to buy fresh ones today. There's meat and peas too. You, your interview is soon. I'll make you mutton stewed with peas. As she spoke, she moved a stove out from a corner. With some charcoal, she boiled a pot of hot water. Before the water boiled, she opened the cupboard's lowest drawer and took out what seems like a treasure, a can of inferior tea leaves. She threw about 10 leaves into the pot and pretended it was real tea. Melissa poured two big cups of tea as she shared two pieces of rye bread with zomingrui over tea. There is no sawdust or excessive gluten mixed in, but it is still unappetizing. Zomengru still felt weak and was starving. He forced himself to swallow the bread with the tea while complaining inwardly. Melissa finished eating a few minutes later. After she adjusted her black hair that reached down to her vest, she looked at Zomingrui and said, remember to buy fresh bread. All we need is 8 pounds. The weather is hot, so the bread will spoil easily. So also buy the mutton and peas. Remember to buy them. Indeed, she was showing concern for her dull brother. She even had to repeat to emphasize it another time. So Mingrui nodded with a smile. All right. Regarding the Loen Kingdom's pound, Zomingri matched client's muscle memory with his. He believed it was close to half a kilogram of what he was accustomed to. Melissa did not say anything further. She stood up, tidied up the area. After packing away the last bit of bread for lunch, she put on a tattered veil cap that their mother left behind, picked up sew, picked up a self-sewn bag used to carry her books and stationery, and prepared to leave. It was not Sunday, so she had an entire day of classes to attend. Walking from their apartment to Tengan Technical School took about 50 minutes. There were public horse carriages that cost a penny a kilometer with a limit of 4 pence in the city and 6 pence in the city outskirts. In order to save money, Melissa would leave ahead of time and walk to school. Moments after she opened the main door, she paused her footsteps and turned her body halfway, saying, Lion, don't buy too much mutton or peas. Vincent might come back on Sunday. Oh, and remember, you only need 8 pounds of bread. All right, sure thing, answered Zomingui exasperately. Simultaneously, he repeated the word Sunday a few times in his head. In the northern continent, year was similarly split into 12 months. Every years there were every year there were 365 or 366 days. A week was similarly split into 7 days. Splitting of months was a result of astronomical observation. It made it made Zolmingrui suspect whether he was in a parallel world. As for splitting of days, it was a result of religion. This was because northern continent had seven orthodox gods: the eternal blazing sun, the lord of storms, the god of knowledge and wisdom, the Evanite goddess, the earth mother, the god of combat, and the god of steam and machinery. Watching his sister close the door and leave, Zomingui suddenly sighed. Soon his thoughts focused on the luck enhancement ritual. Sorry, I really wish to return home. We will stop here for today. See you soon.